Now, here to provide insight is market analyst Shawn Hackett. Hey, Shawn.
Hey, Paul, how are you? It's glad to be here again. Sorry I'm not there personally. I tried.
You're so far away. Nobody ever wants to be in the same room anymore. You did try. We'll talk about your travel troubles in Market Plus. You also have been traveling. I want to hear about this Brazil trip in a minute. But let's start with wheat, because first it was the story of Minneapolis. Now it's the story of Kansas City controlling this market. What's next?
It's really the story of high quality wheat. We've had just a crop failure in the spring wheat crop last year. And of course, winter wheat was not that great either. We have a high quality wheat problem. This is for human consumption at a time when we're worried about not being able to get things from A to B, delays, all kinds of issues with logistics. No one is going to take a chance with high quality wheat. So they're buying what they maybe would have bought 3 months from now. They're buying today to make sure they get delivery on time. And we think this has a long way to go, Paul. We don't think that we're done pricing this high quality wheat situation, because quite frankly, we're not going to get any new supplies until late spring, summer. And if we're correct about a chaotic planting season post dormancy, we may still have much further to price this market in.
Even though it's a major global product, you're saying a lot of what this market is going to be dependent upon is United States produced wheat?
Certainly, United States and Canada is one very important area. Obviously, Russia is another very important area. But from what we see, Russia playing all kinds of games with trying to restrict exports, constantly trying to say, you know what, we want to keep some more at home. We don't like what's going on with weather over there either. And we just feel that with what we see with La Nina coming back and with probably a very cold, late ending winter, it could be really some fireworks for the high quality wheat market. So we think there's more to go here.
Okay, so we've got a 7 in front of the number right now. Are you saying there's a possibility of an 8? Do I hear 9?
Well, I mean, back in 07, 08 and back in 11 and 12, we did see a 10 handle on the wheat market. It wouldn't surprise us if we're correct about our weather forecast over the spring that we might see a 10 handle again. I mean, that's certainly a possibility.
Okay, in corn, this is a story that we're back up again. We were right on that $5 mark, and we've held this week. We just kept adding. Is there more adding ahead?
I think as we get into the upper fives, Paul, we're probably going to slow this market down. But when you really think about it, Brazil had a failed corn crop last year, and we're not going to see anything from South America corn until late spring. And so the market's going to have to deal with that the USA, even though production was good, it wasn't great. And it still leaves the market tenuous when we're trying to get product from A to B and struggling to do so.
All right, there's struggles, inflation. We've talked about it till we're blue in the face. It's now dripping into commodities. There was thought that Wednesday's spike was due to inflation concerns, maybe losing 3 million acres of corn. Where do you see that argument right now?
Well, it's either one or two ways. Either we're not going to plant the corn, at least on the fringe acres, we're not going to plant the corn. And or when we do plant the corn in the core acres, we may not put all that fertilizer down than we're accustomed to doing because it's such a high input cost crop. However you slice it and dice it, it's going to be very, very challenging to produce a big corn crop next year with December 22 corn in that low to mid fives. We think if I'm a livestock producer, I want to be thinking about how do I lock in that December 22 corn price. We think that's a very, very solid hedge right now.
We'll talk about feeders in a minute because that is kind of what my line of questioning was going to be. But you mentioned fertilizer. The N, I can't tell you how many times I saw N in a tweet asking for questions this week. Nitrogen is on the minds. I had a guy tell me right before we came on the show, he knows of somebody that prepaid nitrogen. They're not able to get it. Are you hearing similar stories across the country?
We are. And it's going to be a situation where, even you may not be able to get it at any price for a little while. And maybe there's some questions, Paul, about, how long or when will the fertilizer prices ebb? And we really don't think we're going to see an ebbing in the fertilizer price until we get through the northern hemisphere winter. We think we're in for a long, cold winter, and specifically natural gas, U.S. natural gas prices, we think have considerably higher to go. And it's going to be hard for the fertilizer market, especially the nitrogen fertilizer market, to correct if natural gas prices are going to be catching a strong bid all winter long.
So does this mean beans benefit?
Beans will gain acres. They would certainly, with the winner of these, because to put a soybean crop in the ground is obviously much less, and so that, that's a bearish factor, Paul. It's a bearish factor. We were down in Brazil, and everywhere we looked, there was more soybeans in for coffee acres, more soybeans in for coffee acres, more soybeans in for coffee acres, and it looks great. It's in early. I mean, it looks like we could have a really, really big soybean crop down there. So soybeans, as much as, the renewable diesel story is a big story forward, we still have to deal with this potential for some pretty big supply in the nearby.
Well, and that was you mentioned diesel, but there's also the crush story. There's word of a plant coming on in Kansas. There's expanded capacity if you already are crushing soy. Is that a bullish story?
Anytime you bring a crusher in that wants soybeans, it's nothing bearish about that. But remember, it's a two-edged sword. Everyone's crushing beans to make more bean oil, and we're making more bean meal that we may or may not need. If you're looking at that spread between meal and oil, it's gotten to very, very wide, uncharacteristically wide. So how depressed are we going to get the bean meal market against bean oil before crushing so many soybeans becomes less attractive? That's what we're looking at.
All right, so Ryan in Byron, Illinois, is asking, has the 22 acreage battle already begun? And what should guys be anticipating based off of possible planting intentions next year? Please use the comments you've already used to answer this question now, Shawn.
Yeah, I mean, we did an analysis, Paul, and rice and corn were the two crops that had the highest input cost relative to all the inputs, fertilizer and such. And so those crops are going to be very, very challenged at current prices to deliver on the acres that the market will need and want. So either the prices don't move up and the price does, or at some point the price has to move up before those final planting decisions are made. But either way, we think those are two crops to watch on the acreage front.
What about on the cotton market? Because they keep buying and adding like they're trying to buy acres too.
They are, but we're dealing with over $1. The new crop cotton for next year, over 90 cents, Paul. It's a pretty good price for cotton. They're going to plant it. The cotton guys are going to plant that crop at that price if it stays that way.
All right, in the feeder market, let's start with feeders in the livestock market. You mentioned how you're saying lock in some December feed needs right now. What else are you telling a feeder?
Well, certainly you got to get your feed needs taken care of. If not, we think you're going to be in a world of hurt going into spring, summer. The other thing is think about a very, very cold, snowy, record snowpack winter. We had that back, I think it was 2018, 19. And what does that mean for the feeder market? It means less animals. It means tougher conditions, tougher breeding. It's not a good situation for future supply. It may be a good sign for price, Paul, but in terms of wanting to move the animals like we're accustomed to, a harsh winter against a harsh drought that we've seen out west, really is not what they're looking for at this point.
What does that mean then for the live cattle market?
Deferred prices, we think, are going to have a supply problem. A bullish supply problem. We think that by the time we get into the spring and the summer of next year, the animals are going to be thinned out, the weights are going to be thinned down, and when that whole packer problem of throughput, we can't bring the animals through, too many people not coming to work, all that we've been dealing with is off the table, and we think we could be actually bidding for animals like they've done in the hog market in the past for the first time in a long time. And maybe, just maybe, Paul, the livestock producer gets the upper hand here.
I'm sorry, you cut out right there. I think you said something about the livestock producer benefiting. It must be lost in translation. But the hog producer, the exports there have helped the hog market a little bit this week, right?
Yeah, they've got some better numbers. Look, the market got hit very, very hard, but came right to a triple bottom support there. Buyers came in and said, this is a place that we've been rewarded to buy in the past. So they came in and were rewarded again. I still worry, though, Paul, that unless China really comes back and gets back into buying like they had been, the supply of pork and pigs are going to grow in the future, and I'm worried there's going to be a mismatch here at current prices.
When does this mismatch become exposed?
we think it's between now and really the first of the year. We think this is when it really, really comes out. Now there's a flip side to this. The African swine fever is ebbing in China. They've liquidated all these animals, and they're going to have to start to, rebuild again. And that means that pork and pigs over there are going to start to take off again. So there is a yin and a yang here. We got to get through the yin down before we get the yang back up. So it's really a tale of two different markets, bearish into the first quarter, but then we were pretty optimistic that from second quarter onward, we could see some better prices.
All right. Shawn Hackett, good to see you. We'll talk to you in just a moment. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That will do it for this installment of the TV show we call Market to Market. We will talk more on Market Plus, so join us there. Find that on our website of MarketToMarket.org. And information comes from all different sources, and we've compiled many of the stories that we are reading into a flipboard magazine called Market to Market Reading Material. Click on the red and white F on the homepage of MarketToMarket.org. Next week, we look at the tug of war over water quality. Thank you so very much for watching. Have a great week.
Market to Market is a production of Iowa PBS, which is solely responsible for its content.